Welcome back to another Far Cry New Dawn / Far Cry 5 video. Today I want to talk about where the deputy is in Far Cry New Dawn. Of course, our main character, the protagonist of Far Cry 5. Do they return? Are they dead? What happened? Well, I have a theory about where the deputy is. But before I get too heavily in depth on that, I want to say that, number one, this is a theory. I have some evidence to back this theory up, and I think it's a solid theory, but there could be spoilers for Far Cry New Dawn ahead. So if you're someone who doesn't want to hear anything at all that may spoil any small detail of New Dawn, I suggest you possibly click off the video now. But if not, I hope you'll stick around, hear me out on this theory, and if you have any more feedback of how I may be wrong or right, or just anything to add to the theory, leave a comment down below telling me. I'm really interested. I enjoy game theory, so all other ideas, I really appreciate hearing those. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into where the deputy is in Far Cry New Dawn. With some demo footage that came out somewhat recently about Far Cry New Dawn, we see how the father returns to the world of Far Cry. And I don't want to go into too much detail on that to try to prevent spoilers on that. There's some things when we meet the father and a little after that I want to explain. The father is back and he has Dutch's Island. Of course, that's where the game ended. That's where the deputy and the father were in the bunker at the end of Far Cry 5, of course. And the bunker is where this theory starts. There are some notes that we're led to believe come from the deputy in the bunker. And it seems as if over time the deputy has turned to Joseph Seed's way of thinking, which, whether you like it or not, is kind of expected. When everything Joseph and his followers said seemed to come true every time the deputy tried to fight harder in Far Cry 5, and then being locked up for an extended period of time, which we're not sure how long that time was, but we can assume at least 5 to 10 years. It seems like they've been out for a while because there's a community built. For an extended period of time, the deputy and the father were locked up together and they were each other's only company. So it seems as if it was somewhat inevitable that the deputy would eventually be twisted to the father's way of thinking. And I do believe that in New Dawn, the father's way of thinking is a little bit different than it was in Far Cry 5. Still, his main core philosophies are there. Now, whether he's the cult or not, I'm not sure. And I don't know if he's a good guy, but it seems like he's at least going to be someone we have to get along with in the game. I don't know, again, if he'll be a protagonist or an antagonist. That's something we'll have to play the game to find out. But getting into these letters that the deputy left, I'll put one of them on screen here. They talk about how the deputy had a very severe case of survivor's guilt. Felt very bad that they survived, but many of the people that the deputy made relationships with didn't survive. Basically all of our followers. We're not exactly sure who's back, who's dead, all of that yet. But clearly some people we knew in Far Cry 5 are now gone. And the deputy is guilty feeling over this. And between that and Joseph twisting the deputy's mind a little bit, the deputy, I'm going to be honest, seems like has gone a little bit cuckoo. And in these letters, the deputy talks about how they feel so guilty that they don't want to be seen, and they just want to be given a mask to hide themselves, and how they feel like they can do good in the world by judging other people, and through judging them, helping them find God. This leads us to a character that we see both in this demo footage, and we've already heard about with the release of some of the Guns for Hire for Far Cry 5, a character known as the Judge. Makes sense. The Judge, the deputy wrote a note saying they want to judge people, and this Judge character is wearing a mask and completely hooded and covered up. We can't see any of their actual physical features. All we really know about this character so far is they are connected to Joseph Seed. They're a stealth fighter. That doesn't really tell us much about where they came from. The deputy could have changed to be any type of fighter over time. And the biggest piece of evidence to me that this could possibly be the deputy is the fact that when we reach the compound that Joseph Seed is in, the first person we meet, the gatekeeper of this community, is the judge. The judge opens the gate to our character and allows us into this compound. All these things kind of piled on top of each other kind of leads me to believe that our character will return in the form of a gun for hire known as the judge. And this is a really good way for our character to return to the game, because as you know, in Far Cry 5, the player chose what the deputy looked like, whether it was a man or a woman, what, you know, their physical appearance, things about them. They were a silent protagonist, so to an extent, the player got to pick who the deputy was, which was a big plot point for Far Cry 5, is the player really needed to connect very closely to the deputy, and allowing the player to create who the deputy was and kind of pick some of their backstory for themselves. The player really could connect well with the deputy, and it really drew you into the story and made the decisions the deputy were making not just the decisions the game was giving you, but the decisions you as the player would make. And to have the deputy come back in any other form would sort of kill the lore of Far Cry 5. Anytime you went back to play Far Cry 5 after playing New Dawn, if the deputy just showed up as a man or a woman and was different than our player character in Far Cry 5, it would just kill the replayability of Far Cry 5, because then we couldn't decide. We'd always have in the back of our mind, well, the deputy is really this. And it would sort of twist how well the story of Far Cry 5 worked. But having the deputy come back as a masked character, who I'm almost assuming will have no voice dialogue. I do not know that for a fact, but just something tells me that the judge will be a silent or a very low talking character. They won't talk very much. And that will allow us to not really know who the judge is, but also possibly know this is the deputy, and allow us to take the character we created for ourselves in Far Cry 5 and adapt it to who that character now is in Far Cry New Dawn. Again, this is just theory, but as with everything on my channel, I won't give a theory without some evidence, and I feel like there's a lot of evidence pointing this way. The story of Far Cry 5 twisted us all sorts of different ways, and unless you really sat back and thought about it, you maybe had a hard time understanding this. And this was due to, in a few places, honestly, just some bad storytelling that had to be interpreted, and also some really good storytelling that had to be interpreted. And that mix of things made Far Cry 5 somewhat of a hard game to just casually play through and actually enjoy the story of. You had to actually sort of be serious about Far Cry 5 to gain everything there was to gain off the story. If you want to get caught up on that story and be ready for the release of New Dawn, I suggest you check out my video about the true story of Far Cry 5 and the true story of Joseph Seed's cult, because it'll be a good refresher course for those who haven't played the game in a long time, and it will also be good for people who maybe didn't get everything there was to get out of the story. And even if you did, I hope you guys will check it out. I put a lot of effort into it, try to make it the best video I could. But that's really all I got to say on this topic. Is the deputy's back, possibly. I really hope so. This would be a good place to reinstate the deputy into the lore of the Far Cry world. Without further ado, if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a like, and if you want to see some more Far Cry New Dawn, Far Cry 5, I hope you click the subscribe button down below. And with that said, as always, I hope you have a wonderful day.